We are going live, and I have a special guest because we don't have Ernest with us here today. We don't have Ernest here with us today, so instead I have my dependent. If we're going with our tax theme, so I have my dependent here in front of me. All right.
They're even matching.
Oh yeah, 2P and Baby Law are matching. They're not. I'm not matching with them, but
No.
yeah.
Meant to be.
She's not meant to be matching. That's what my wife said. Yeah. So here is an example. Exhibit A today of a tax dependent. And something that we will talk about when it comes to your personal side of the taxes. But again, thank you, and thank you all for being here. Sorry about this. Oh, sorry about the. Obviously, Baby and Law is very happy to be here. But we are here for your brand, your business, and I'm going to make sure our dependents are awake. Okay. All right. But yes, I think there's cause for celebration, Galen. Do you know that? I think this is the first time that we've done 3 shows in a row.
No, it definitely is the first time we've done 3 shows in a row. That was hence last week's tweet on the nearly unprecedented second show in a row.
That one was nearly, because I think we may have done that once before.
Yeah,
although
exactly.
Probably not all at our standard streaming time. This definitely is the first time that we've done 3 in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it was a near miss too.
It was a near miss. Yes, I'm happy to report that. We had a little bit of a. This is a tangent now, kind of to help us warm up and let more people get in. We had a little bit of a health concern for Baby Law, but I'm happy to report that everything is okay right now. But this is timely because we will be talking about health insurance for a little bit, and kind of what are some tax tips and best practices that are related to that also. But before we get into that, we do have to kind of make sure we go ahead and do our due diligence and disclaimer the heck out of this. So, welcome to Your Brand, Your Business. This is a show where Galen and I, as a financial planner and attorney respectively, discuss legal and business issues for content creators. Having said that, our opinions are our own. There are professional and personal opinions, but they don't reflect that of Twitch. They don't reflect that of StreamerSquare. And we're not your lawyers. We're not your financial planners, although we could be. But until we sign an engagement letter, this advice is being offered for educational purposes, because we want to help you know resources that are available out there.
I like that you worked the soft sell into your disclaimer.
Hey, bills got to be paid, right? But anyway, so this is, as I was saying, this is Your Brand, Your Business. This is here for as an educational resource, which is why we're on here on StreamerSquare, a great resource center for content creators and other broadcasters. This is the continuation of our tax month theme. This is the second episode of tax month. Last week, which I know Galen is kind of suffering from his day drinking yesterday, which I'll let him get into.
You know what? I am actually fine.
Okay, in that case,
it's more sleepiness than it is suffering.
Yeah. In that case, then, opinions don't reflect that of Baby at Law either. So, in that case, if Galen is fine, we'll go ahead and let Galen do his piece.
We're starting with the previously?
Of course.
All right. Yeah. Previously on Your Brand, Your Business.
Yeah.
See, I've been watching too much Dragon Ball Z Abridged lately. I like got that stuck in my head.
We gotta start doing... Oh, go ahead. I was gonna say we gotta start doing different times.
Head chala. Last time we did our introduction to taxes, where we had Ernest come and talk in all sorts of detail about taxes, which was super nice because he is in way like the deep end of tax season right now. So the fact that he actually took the time to work with us, getting a call. They took the time to come and talk with us was awesome. We learned a lot about how taxes work. And today we're going to be going over some of those, some things that are similar, but more just like tips and tricks of how you can make your life a little easier dealing with tax time going forward in the future. I would like to note I am not always hungover for this show. Just in case that's a thing that needs to be questioned at all. There have been times, but
There have
no,
been
not always.
times.
Yeah.
Yes, and that actually is one of our tax tips and for this season. If you are hiring an attorney or an accountant or a CPA, make sure you probably should have contacted them already because let's just be frank.
You're way too late now.
Yeah,
you're in extension period at this point. If you contact them now for tax stuff, they're going to say, if you're okay with filing an extension so that you do the 6-month thing and you pay in October, then we can work together. Otherwise, there's no way they'll sign with you. Honestly, you might be slightly concerned about someone who still has the capacity to take you on at this point.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Like, why do they have that? And maybe they're just started their business or something, and that's fine. But otherwise, it's like,
Yeah, that is a very good point. Yes, but having said that, to use an analogy, because we like analogies here on this show, if you've worked retail before, you know your nightmare season is from Thanksgiving to Christmas.
God.
Yeah, if you are a tax preparer, your nightmare season is from
start of March.
January?
Yeah, start of March is like super serious because of
February to April. Yeah,
like LLC filings.
Yeah, information returns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, corporation returns exactly. And then, but I mean, realistically, if you're doing taxes, life sucks like January to April, and then September, October, and then December. It's a good chunk of the year.
Any quarter end usually isn't that great. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
they're not as bad.
Not as bad. Yeah. So April, I know my CPA, he always takes like a really long extended vacation after April 15th because he's earned it. Yeah. But so having like the last girl at the club. All right. But yes. So last week, if you missed that episode, I highly, highly, highly recommend you go ahead and watch the VOD. It's available right now on the StreamerSquare channel. I can send you a link. Actually, I will post a link here in chat shortly, unless Tyler or another mod is able to kind of... Actually, Tyler, you probably can't post it yet.
Tyler's not a mod.
Yeah, Tyler's not a mod. So unless somebody else, a mod, can post that link in chat for us right now. That'll give you a little bit of a kind of basic groundwork, assuming that you don't know anything about taxes or if you have a lot of misconceptions about taxes. That'll give you some basic groundwork about the whole premise of filing taxes and doing your taxes. The episode today is to offer a little bit more kind of, now you know what taxes are. Well, what are some actual actionable advice that we can kind of give you? So that's kind of, today's going to be a lot less, conceptual stuff, a lot less like high theory and detail about taxes, but actually just like, this is where Gail and I can offer you, advice on just kind of what to actually do, right? Or what you should have been doing. Let's be blunt. What you should have
been doing.
Yes. So today's advice will actually be split up into 2 sections. The first, because we're going to cover this so you can start planning ahead, because we really need you to plan ahead, is tips and practices for year round. The second is going to be procrastinator tips. So make sure you pay attention to those also. First is what in an ideal situation, but then we understand that this, nothing is ever really ideal. So what can you do now than in a procrastinator situation? Mm-hmm. But why don't we go ahead and get started then? So the first let's get started with our tips and practices for year round.
Sure. I've got a couple like big sort of bigger like just tips that apply sort of all of the time and aren't necessarily like a specific, these ones are the conceptual, but I think they're important tips. The first one is if you've already spent the money for your business, for something for your stream, you're just hurting yourself if you don't track it and get the deduction for it because you already spent it. Second is you shouldn't spend money that you weren't going to otherwise spend just to reduce your taxes. Like you shouldn't go out and buy something for the business that you weren't going to buy just to reduce your taxes. And the third is there are a couple tools that you can use to help you estimate taxes. I have one, Ernest has one. Reach out to us for that kind of stuff because it can help. Um, all right, for on the year round stuff. The first one is the one that we've done a show on and talked about in pretty much every show, and is Joel's favorite topic to talk about, which is the first thing you can do is just get organized.
My favorite
Like,
topic to talk about, but my least
it,
favorite to do to implement.
dude, we're packing for a move right now. You want
Oh,
to know how much I hate organization?
why would you do that in the middle of tax filing turn?
It wasn't our choice. The people we're renting from sold the place.
Gotcha. Maybe they were trying to maximize some taxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so step one is just get organized. I literally have a folder. I mean, you can't really see it, but it's back there that anytime I have a receipt for the business, I throw it in there. Because that way they're all in one place. And if I need to ever check in on something, yeah, they're not super organized in there, but at least I know the general pile in which I should be looking for that receipt.
Yes.
Similarly on that, like, get some digital organization. There are a bunch of different tools that can help you do it. If you're using accounting software, it should let you like upload images of receipts. If you're there are apps like Expensify and stuff like that, where there's a free version or like a $5 a month or something like that version, where they can help you digitally organize these things. Part of the reason I like digitally organizing these things is because if you're going to have to hold on to these receipts, you need to be using. If you need to hold on to these receipts for more than a year, which is generally true, you need to realize that receipts are printed as cheaply as possible,
Yep.
right? So like ink scrubs off, and it sucks to have a blank receipt where you can see like where you bought something from and the date, but not how much it cost or what it was. So digital organization.
Yes.
Do digital. Spend the $5 a month or whatever it is.
Do you
to
have
make
a
your
specific
life
one
easier.
that you do for? I've seen a couple ads for
Um,
like just apps that you could have on your phone that you just take a
yeah,
picture of the receipt and instantly. I think QuickBooks even has a feature for it inside of QuickBooks.
yeah, they do. And I use for my accounting, I use FreshBooks. It's the same thing. I can just take a picture of the receipt.
And it like
But
actually scans the text and pre-populates the fields, or it's just
no, it's
okay.
just take a picture of it, so it's attached to the record itself. You still have to put it in.
Okay.
If you're working with someone who's actually doing your bookkeeping, like an accountant, then that's when you use tools like, again, like Expensify, where you aren't the one doing that kind of stuff. That's really helpful because then you just take pictures of all of your receipts and then you leave it to your bookkeeper to actually do the reconciliation and data entry and stuff like that. If you're your own bookkeeper, then you still have to follow up later to do it, but at least it's organized all in one place. OSG asked a really good question. It's If you get audited, you should have a copy of the actual receipt or a credit card statement.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you're holding on to these receipts for if you get audited, right? Like, when you submit your expenses as a part of your like reconciling for your annual return, and if you say like, if you have documented in your accounting software what you spent on and when, that's good, right? You only need the backup if you get audited.
Yeah. I think
Or if you have an accountant that needs to or that feels like they need to check in on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to distinguish between also. So when we're talking about taxes, and this is kind of like, again, why you should watch last week's episode, because this is step 2, really, right? If some of the stuff that we're talking about now, if you didn't watch last week and you weren't already familiar with the concept, it might not make a whole lot of sense. So I do apologize for that in advance. Go ahead, watch that other one, then come back and watch the VOD of this one.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're talking about taxes, it's important to distinguish between who you need to do the preparation for and what actually, like, what is I guess the different stages to keep in mind, right?
Yeah.
The first one is the actual tax preparation and filing stage. So in this stage, the people who have the most amount of work are you and a tax preparer if you are hiring a tax preparer, right? If it's just you and tax preparation software, you have the entire burden, right? If it's just if it's just if it's you and a tax preparer, then it's you kind of split the burden depending on how much, like if you're how much you hire them or pay them to do, then they may have more of a burden than you or whatnot, but you still have to be somewhat involved.
Mm-hmm.
The third stage of this would be the uh, God forbid if you got audited, right?
Right.
So actually, in this first stage, there's very little interaction with the IRS. If everything goes according to plan, you never talk to the IRS. All you do is you submit a filing and you get a refund back, or you pay your taxes back, right? That third stage, the potential audit and what comes after an audit, is the boogeyman in this closet. It's the monster under the bed, right? That is the thing that everyone hopes they don't have to deal with. But if you do have to deal with it, you better make sure everything was already prepared. And so some of these tax tips that we're sharing right now are in relation to that third stage. Or I guess that really is just kind of like I guess if the first stage is you actually accumulating what your earnings are and stuff like that. Second stage is you preparing the filings.
I mean, most of the things we have on this list, I would personally classify as there for your own sanity and well-being when
Yes.
running the business,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like they're mostly for you.
Yeah, most of these are for that. But then, and let's going forward, we'll do our best to kind of highlight: is this for the preparation stage, or is this for the potential and very likely, very, I can't say unlikely, right? It's not even really an optional stage, right? It's a do you get selected stage, right? So
Right.
the potential stage, but then the scary stage, if you will, right? So most of these steps are for your prep stage and filing stage, but some of them are, like the receipts, are for your scary stage. OSG's question regarding keeping the receipts or anything else like that, and then the need for evidence. What I've always been told, and what my experience is that if you do get to the scary stage, they want to see as close to the actual physical evidence as possible, right?
Yeah.
And it's completely understandable that sometimes that doesn't work. Like as Galen mentioned, receipts are by nature printed on very flimsy thing, because like if they were printing like high quality receipts, it would actually end up being
On
extremely
photo paper and color, glossy.
That's a lot of cost for the business.
What the hell are you buying if that is the receipt that you're getting?
Although I will note that that's why a lot of companies are moving towards e-receipts now, even in store. Like if you're in store and then they ask, do you want an e-receipt or do you want it to, like, because even if businesses
all
are
of my
moving to
beer
digital,
purchases yesterday are in my email.
So you have evidence of your hungover or your hangover.
I'm not hungover.
Yeah.
I had 3 beers at like 3. I'm fine.
Okay, that works. Anyway, so e-receipts are definitely kind of moving toward that direction. But if that's the original, right? So then that you're saving that as the original, that's fine. And it kind of depends on the nature of your work too. If you're an employee and then you have to submit, reimbursement to like an accountant or something like that, usually they want to see itemized receipts also. So that's kind of a tip that you kind of need to keep in mind for that specific situation. When it comes to the IRS, it usually is as close to the original as possible. And then it's just kind of degrees from there. If you don't have the original, then a picture or a scan of it. If you don't have that, then you have the credit card statement. If you don't have that, then you have just your entry into whatever accounting software you're going to use.
Yeah.
But be cognizant of the fact that the IRS is just that's basically saying that's just your word. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And credit card statements are decent, right? Like if you can walk through the itemized record, and that's part of one of our big sort of tips just in general is set up systems to make it easier for you to track all of these things with the minimum amount of effort. So we can get into that one later, but that's definitely one of the ones that we like a lot because it makes life better.
But I mean, that's a great point as far as organization goes, because this throwing back to our organization episode, which is also available on as a VOD or VOD on the Twitch StreamerSquare channel. So please go ahead and watch that. Also, we were joined by the wonderful Petricat, who had a lot of great tax tips as far as organization goes, or just regular organization tips. But this is kind of just, as Galen mentioned, putting everything in a place that you know where you can find it. At least if you have everything in the same place, you don't have to necessarily start putting everything into a tax preparation software, but just put it all in the same place. It makes it much easier later on, right? Rather than digging through lots and lots of files to find the right thing. So usually you'll start getting tax emails, tax preparation letters. And by that, I mean like your W-2, your 1099s, all your filings, right? You'll start getting them in January.
Yeah, end of January through mid-February, depending on who it's from.
Yes. So what I do is anytime I get one of those, then I have a folder for every single tax year, and then I just take that, I open it, and I immediately put it into that folder. So even if I don't have time to look at it right now, I know where I can find it later. Or you can do it, if you're doing it digitally, then you have a label. This is tax year 2017, everything that's on that label. And it's fortunate that if you have an online account, a lot of those places, those documents are available electronically now. Some of them, sometimes that's the only method that they're available. So you have to kind of...
I think my wife's W-2 was only available electronically. And that may have been something that we selected.
Yes.
An option that we chose, but it definitely made our life easier when we were doing taxes. A, because it just got imported into TurboTax. And B, because then we didn't have to like wonder where that piece of paper was that we might have gotten a month or a half earlier or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly true. And then in addition to organization, it's also mental organization, which we discussed in that organization episode. Thank you, OSG, for posting the link. The U.S. is in transition from paper to digital, right? So I wouldn't know. I probably can't even say it's mostly paper still, but it's definitely in transition, and there is still a lot of paper still.
Yeah, I'm trying to think on our taxes this year, most of what we had was digital, and the only things that weren't were like some 1099s from some small businesses that I did contract work for. And that's about it. Everything else pretty much was digital.
I will say that's probably, I think most things are digital, but then like in this particular space with content creators, I feel like you may have a lot more paper based.
Yeah.
Simply because you are working with small businesses, and digital is easy when you can do it on a large scale, and it's cost effective when you can do it on a large scale. But you know, I have a small business. Am I going to make a digital portal for all 3 of my employees, half of them who don't even use electronic stuff normally? No. Right? So then I had paper W-2s. But then as far as like, PayPal, you might get a digital 1099, right? Twitch, you probably will have the digital 1099. But then what about all your other sponsors and stuff like that? If they owe you 1099, first, are they even going to give you a 1099, which they should be? And then second, like, are they probably just mailing it to you rather than doing it email? A lot of it depends on, when it comes to small business, there's a lot more, I don't want to say non-compliance, but it's a lot more
hit or miss.
Yeah, like up in the air, right? So it's basically if they know that they should be doing that, and if they do that, like how readily available are they making those forms available to you? So that was a great question, though, and I think it's just that, it is kind of odd that you would think that like this industry, being as high tech as it is the one that's still doing paper stuff, right? But it's just kind of, they're not really. I might get some flack for saying this, but this industry is still getting to the point where they're realizing they have to be in compliance with tax returns and tax filings. So let's get to the point where people are actually regularly filing taxes first, and then we'll worry about them getting digital versus paper versions of their tax forms.
Twitter is a wonderful place for every once in a while getting to like go like, oh, okay, wow, we're still answering those questions. I'm like, do I have to pay, and is it normal? And like, I owe a couple grand. It's like, yeah, you also made a couple grand. Like, that's just how it works.
Yeah, you should have made a couple of more than a couple grand to pay a couple grand, right?
Right, exactly.
But then, in addition to doing this organization, whether that's digitally or paper, right? The other part of it is doing mental organization. So do a little, and this is still, we're still in the tips for practices for year round. So this is something you should be doing throughout the year. right? Obviously, you'll get most of your forms when it's closer to tax filing time, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be keeping track of your,
You should know
yeah.
what you're going to get ahead of time pretty accurately. Like there may be some small discrepancies, but you should know. And big part of the reason that you should know is because some of the people who actually do track this super well have noticed discrepancies with what Twitch has sent them, and they've had to reach out to Twitch and be like, "The fuck."
Yeah. And this goes right back to what we were saying about like the industry is still getting to that full compliance part, right? Because it is a new industry. But forget about whether it's Twitch or PayPal or any of the larger organizations. Think about the indie game companies or the indie retailers, or I shouldn't say indie retailers. Is that even a thing? Small retailers that are like doing the sponsorships or the endorsements, or
Those
that you
little
have
indie
some sort of,
retailers like
yeah,
EA.
yeah, or that you have an affiliate with, right?
Yeah.
They are, we give the streamers and the content creators flack for being like, I didn't know I have to file my taxes. We can just as easily give those businesses flack for saying, I didn't know I have to provide tax forms, right? So,
Yeah.
but
But
that's just kind of the point. So it's
I
being
think
organized also includes what Galen is suggesting, or or he should actually be saying, kind of like mandating, right? That you be mentally organized and know what your revenues and your incomes and your expenditures are throughout the year, so that you can actually keep those businesses accountable. Make sure that, hey, you actually owe me this, or hey, whether that's you owe me a form or you owe me some missing money, right?
where's my money?
Yeah.
But that goes into the next point we had of the plan and pay ahead, which is you should be, one of the things you should be doing for the year round is paying your quarterly taxes. And Ernest and I had a friendly discussion about this on the last one of the cost of the penalty for not paying your quarterly taxes versus the potential benefit from having the extra couple potentially grand sitting around to use. That's a whole other discussion. But in general, from a making sure that your taxes go off without a hitch, paying your quarterlies makes a lot of sense. And it makes a lot of sense because it forces you to actually do your tax stuff every 3 months instead of just doing it once a year. And if you're doing it every 3 months, you're just more likely to hit all of the notes that you're supposed to hit, and you're less likely to forget things. So that's a big reason to do it, in my opinion. The second is just that it gives you a much more realistic sense of your business if you're accounting for the taxes that you owe every 3 months, instead of being like, things are going great, and then all of a sudden you owe $20K at the end of the year. You're like, oh, I have $20,000 less than I thought I did. Like, at least then you know better, like going throughout the course of the year. And a piece of that plan ahead and pay ahead is saving for those quarterlies, saving for the April actually end of year reconciliation, and just hi cat.
Yeah.
My cat's super into saying hi to me right now. And just a really big piece of that is knowing that you need to set aside money for tax and having a specific place that you do set aside that money for tax, and doing it consistently. So whenever you get paid something, siphoning off a portion of it to go to a tax fund.
Yes. And I would argue that, and I think you'd agree, your financial savings of paying your quarterlies, when we're talking about the penalty and the interest, those are probably going to pale in comparison to the actual headache and stress that you save yourself. Right?
For sure. You're probably, unless you're a huge streamer, you're probably getting a couple $100 in penalty at most. But what you're really saving yourself is hours and hours and hours and hours of pain and suffering, and your time is worth more than that.
Yeah. And really, it's just kind of like you can breathe a little easier knowing that you've at least chipped away at your tax liability throughout the year, rather than having it, be this monster that you have to all of a sudden pay all at once. And I think that's kind of, we talk about these topics a lot, but this is part of what we're talking about for year-round stuff. It's just knowing that this is taxes don't exist just in April, right?
No.
Taxes exist year round, so you have to be aware of them year round. Although you don't have to spend that much time on them, but then the more time you spent throughout the year on dealing with these taxes, it
Hmm.
saves you that time and then some come April, right?
It
So think,
saves me a lot of eye strain in
yeah.
March and April if you've done this kind of stuff and been organized so I don't have to roll my eyes quite as much. Like,
Yeah.
saves me a lot of eye strain.
Do it for Galen's eye strain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But that leads us into the next tip, which is kind of setting up these systems, right? So setting up, you're if you get organized, then you know that you can plan and pay ahead, right? If you know that you want to, if you're preparing to plan and pay ahead, then you need to set up the systems to help you to do that, right? That
Hmm.
includes systems for reimbursement and expense tracking and really income and revenue tracking also. So you know how much you have to know how much you earn to be able to pay your estimate, right? That's just
Hmm.
that's how it works, right? There are a variety of ways you can do that. You can kind of just do that through your own kind of spreadsheets or your own pen and paper or your own. I wouldn't recommend pen and paper, right? But you could
God.
do that kind of like just sort of online document. It doesn't have to be QuickBooks or FreshBooks or anything that
Wave
significant.
is free. Like, use
Yeah,
Wave. It's free.
or just Google Sheets is free too, right? Just put in a
Yeah.
column, just say I earned this
Yeah.
month, I earned this month, and then that kind of helps you know what you have coming in, right? Or even just check your PayPal statements, right?
Hmm.
That's a way of kind of tracking your systems. Just develop a system and develop one that works for you, and then use that.
And then
Um,
actually use it. Yeah.
yeah, if you want to get like even more advanced or more automated, I should say, you can kind of develop a payroll system, right? And the
Hmm.
payroll system is something that like rather than you having to worry about paying your quarterly estimates, then if you have a payroll, that's just withheld every single time you have a paycheck, right? That involves kind of getting some more entities set up and stuff like that. But so that's a little bit that is a automatic system that is worth it in the long run, but do know you have some kind of startup cost that's both in time and in energy and in money that you have to invest to set up that system, but it works in the
Yep.
long run, right?
Well, and even just like you can set up a pseudo system where you have like a lot of online banks will let you open multiple sub accounts in a savings account. So
Mm-hmm.
like you have your savings account, but then you can have sub accounts named like tax or car fund or whatever the heck it is that you're saving for, and you can just make it so that something automatically siphons off over there each time you pay yourself out of the business.
Yeah,
Ta-da!
that works too, right? So like it's
Hmm.
kind of like you have your own withholding that's being set up, right? The payroll thing is just kind of advanced because then that's
Yeah,
also getting then sent to the correct taxing authorities. Um,
right.
but then also business use accounts. That's another great way to do it. Have separate accounts, and I've seen streamers do this pretty well. They have a business account that's for their channel, and then they don't necessarily withdraw every single dollar that they earn, right? So
No, they
they
shouldn't.
and you shouldn't really. It's also kind of a way of stabilizing your income, right? So let's say you had you're during the summer because we talked about differences in cash flow last episode. During the summer, you do really well, and then you're earning three times what you normally do, right? Um, but then what you can do is you have that business account, and then you don't draw out everything you earn, but instead you split it up over time. So during those leaner winter months, then we're almost getting biblical with these analogies.
I
During
was gonna
those
say, yeah.
during those leaner winter months that you've stored that, then you can still continue to kind of take out an average amount so that you have a steady paycheck, if you will.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, I spent half an hour yesterday drawing out a diagram for a client of here's how we're going to set up your business and personal accounts, and here's how the money is going to flow through them, starting with PayPal to your business checking. And like, it actually was worth it to draw the diagram and get it figured out like that because that just made it make a lot more sense, made it a lot easier to figure out, and helped us find um, more effective systems that would work for that client in terms of like, hey, if it's set up like this, does this cover what you need? Will you be happy with this? When they were able to see it, they're like, oh yeah, yeah, that's fine. And they got like why we were keeping cash in some accounts and why we were moving it to other accounts and all those kinds of things.
Yes. Yeah.
Make you a pretty drawing, please. Yeah, that
Hey, you
logo
know
that
what?
That is, first of all, it was not a pretty drawing because it was on the whiteboard software in Zoom. So it was not remotely pretty, but that is one of the things that I do. It's the step one this time of year. So this is just a general thing that I can talk about for working with clients. Step one for this kind of year, if they're new clients and they're streamers, is usually all hands on deck. Holy shit, let's get some like tax, which we'll talk about later, but like tax saving account open and deal with that. And then once that point is passed, then and things are a little more calm, then we go back to all right, let's actually do the efficient organization so that in the future this is a lot less painful.
Yes. You
but
know what? Like that's kind of what we talked about earlier, also with organization systems, right? If you get started with something that works for you first, that might be a very rudimentary system, but once you get that in practice and you get used to it, then you can upgrade that system, right?
Yep.
That can go from being your own pseudo payroll system of automatic withdrawals to actually establishing a payroll system. Just like if you can do your kind of pseudo organization system of having everything in a folder to find, then going into software and then having everything,
luckily I was able to select text, like type in text, box drawers and arrow drawers from the whiteboard software, so I didn't have to like actually pen it all out because then it would have been like, is this a Picasso?
Yeah. That's when you got to get yourself a tablet and one of those cool pens that you could write on.
That would not make it neater if I was still responsible for doing it. That would make it no neater.
I'm not saying my handwriting is any good, but my handwriting with a pen is definitely better than my handwriting with a mouse.
I guess it would be if I had like one of those the stylus where I could like also drag shapes on there. But regardless, bad idea.
All right, so
I know my strengths; they're not art.
So if you can't tell already, these tips are somewhat sequential, right? So first, get organized. After you're organized, plan ahead. Once you start planning ahead, set up those systems, and then now we're kind of talking about the next step of those systems and like ways to lower your tax liability, better systems that you have in place, and these are kind of contributing to tax advantaged accounts.
One thing that we touched on, but I don't know if we like explicitly called out, but we definitely touched on was set up accounts that you're actually only going to use for business. So that way, and this is on the organization piece, this is on the setting up systems piece. We talked about it with all the, John Madden style diagrams that I do for clients, but set up business only accounts like banking, credit cards, those kinds of things, and use them only for the business. So that if you're an LLC, you're not at risk of, and the lawyer can back me up on this, piercing the corporate veil. I'm not a lawyer, but the lawyer can back me up.
Yep.
And then B, like just having, if it does go to the case like we were talking about earlier of you got to pull a credit card statement because you need to confirm what you've done because you were, at TwitchCon and you didn't have any time to like save receipts or write things down while you were doing it, you can at least pull it from one source and see everything that you spent.
Yes. Right.
So,
and then, at the risk of sounding frank or too blunt, if you have separate accounts but you still commingle them, that's just shooting yourself in the foot, right?
That's just stupid.
Yeah, like why would you set up those different accounts and use them for those purposes? Otherwise, you just have like two different credit cards that you still have to go through at the end of the year.
The only time I put business expenses on my personal credit card is when I accidentally forget to change the card that I'm using at Amazon checkout. Like that is the only time, and it's a mistake, and it's one that's annoying. And it'll make my reconciliation a little bit difficult. But then I go and enter the stuff into my accounting software, so I have the record of it there, so I'm still not missing it. But literally, the only time I do not use my business card for business expenses is when I mess up.
Yeah.
I usually realize it after the fact, OSG, and then it's like,
What you could really do is then you have two separate Amazon accounts. You have one that's for your business and one that's for personal.
Yes, I could. But I don't want to pay for Prime a second time.
That's true.
the net benefit of like not messing up these couple reconciliations isn't worth the extra $99 I'd be paying.
Think about all the other extra Twitch Prime subs you would get.
Isn't that against TOS, like spamming Prime subs?
Well, if one of them was actually, let's say you had a Twitch, you can't have them on the same Twitch account. right?
I
You
don't
just
have two Twitch accounts.
well, then that's
Are
if
you
we're
view
taking
botting?
no. If we're going to this degree of separation, then I would have one for me personally, and then I'd have one for my legal practice, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah. But
Gotcha.
okay. Next, then, in addition to this kind of the talk of this separate accounts, and I guess it's worth pointing out, it doesn't have to actually be a business credit card like a Amex business card
No.
or a Chase business card. We just mean get a separate credit card, and you make that personal distinction that this is for your business and then this is for your personal stuff, right? I know PayPal offers business accounts versus regular accounts. It does.
Oh yeah.
Make
When I'm
sense for
talking
you to have a
about business
account.
accounts,
Yeah.
I don't mean leave all of your money in PayPal because
Yeah.
that is your business account.
Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Right? PayPal is a payment processor. It is not a financial institution. Right? So there's a key reason they don't do that, and this goes back to what we talked about last week. Don't funnel like charity donations through your PayPal. Don't oh don't have your Twitch payments going into your PayPal in addition to all of your tips, because that's just extra work, right? Because then at the end of the year you have a 1099 from Twitch and you have a 1099 from PayPal, and then you might have to go through and say, oh hey, this is all of the stuff that I need to kind of make sure I don't count twice, right?
Yeah.
So please, find a free checking account and just use that.
There are tons of them.
Yes.
Tons of them.
There are online ones. You can do an online based account.
Ally is great. Capital One 360 is great. There are some now. Amex is starting to get into that space. Like tons of ones that you can get for free, where you get a passable interest rate on the savings. You can set up named sub accounts and just make your life easier.
Yep. Yes. Then your Twitch payments won't be subject to like if you got some chargeback crap, right? Then, yeah.
Right.
You
won't get it. You won't get it frozen.
Yeah. So, what else are that? What else are
we were starting to get into tax advantage accounts before I made sure that we like specifically nailed the business account piece because it is important.
Yes. Yeah. And then I mean, again, we can take a little bit of pause here to kind of point out you can always find us on the Discord channel Discord server, for StreamerSquare, which is I believe it's SS Discord.
Joel's amongst the plebs. I have a fancy colored name, so I'm easier to find. So if you've got these questions, just let us know in there.
Discord. Oh, hey, yeah. Why do I have to be a pleb? Who can I talk to get a fancy name color? I'm assuming
talk to management. Talk to the mods.
Yeah. Okay. And anyway, but you can either join us on Discord or you can find us on Twitter. That you can always ask us those questions. We'll be happy to kind of point you in a certain direction later on. Don't be afraid that like if we talked about it before, we covered it before, and then it actually wasn't, you didn't remember or you need a reminder. It's perfectly fine. We've studied this stuff a lot, which is why we know it off the back of our hand. But that's not the right analogy.
Nope.
No, I'm beyond the point of caffeine right now. I'm at electrolyte level now. So like if you can't tell,
his
already,
drinks
I'm
have
running
what plants
fumes.
crave.
Yeah. Is that an idiocracy thing? Yeah. Sometimes I think we are living in that movie, but that's for another conversation. Yeah.
When your business turns to politics.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway. Yeah, I'm just going to stop us there before we get
special guest, not Galen, for that episode.
Yeah. So, feel free to reach out for us for whether this is any question or something like that. Actually, Galen and I, right before we started this episode, we were talking about doing a potential future episode where it's just kind of like a call-in show, and we would take all kinds of questions. So
we'd probably have to organize that one like 2 weeks in advance just to make sure we had enough people coming in.
Yeah, otherwise it's going to be like, hey, us asking our respective wives to call in with fake questions. Yeah. Anyway, tax advantage accounts, right? And so if this, I said all that because this is a potentially complicated area. Where if you are looking for more information or you need more information, first, Galen's got a lot of great articles out there about it. Second, you can always ask us about it. So I'm going to let Galen talk about it for now, though.
Yeah. So tax advantage accounts exist basically because the US government wants to incentivize you to save. Um, so they've set up a couple different types of accounts, mostly for retirement savings, some for different things like paying for education costs or paying for healthcare costs. Um, but you can get a a tax break for putting money into these types of accounts, which if you're someone who already just has like the money sitting around because you did a good job saving it, you might as well put it into one of these accounts. The first one, and pretty much the most beneficial, is called a health savings account, which, if you qualify for it, you have to have what's called a high deductible health plan. And Google high deductible health plan. There's specifics on it. But if you have a high deductible health plan, you qualify for an HSA, which is an individual account where if you can put up to, as a single filer, $3,400 in it, and as a married filer, $6,800, I believe, for 2017, 2018. And you can put it in up till tax time for 2017. So you still could put money in one of these if you're eligible. But basically, this is the type of account where it's for healthcare expenses. And if you put money in there, you get a tax break for the money that you put in. So it's a deduction on your taxes. You can invest at least some of the money that's in there and it'll grow tax free. And then when you take it out to pay for qualifying medical expenses, which is most non-cosmetic medical expenses, you don't pay tax on it. So this is potentially money that you're never taxed on. So if you're going to be saving it anyways, and if you are a human in the United States where one of the biggest causes of bankruptcy is medical expenses, then it can be a really good way to give yourself a tax break while still saving the money that you were already going to save. The next one we had down the list is called an IRA, or an individual retirement account. There are two types. One's called any sort of retirement account that I call a traditional account. Means you get a tax break today, and then when you take the money out in retirement, you pay taxes on it. The other type is called a Roth account, where you pay the taxes today, and then when you take the money, when you take the money out of it, you aren't paying taxes. So again, if you're going to be saving this money anyways, instead of sitting on a pile of cash in your bank account or under your mattress or whatever, throw it in one of these accounts because you'll get yourself some tax breaks that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. There are some business specific ones, and I wrote a whole article on this, and I'm not going to go into in depth on those because there's a lot of information on it. But if you're a streamer, that means you're running your own business. That means you potentially have access to some of these types of accounts where you can similarly do tax advantage savings. And again, this is a bit of a double dip, right? You're saving for your future, but you're also paying less in tax. Like, that's pretty sweet. The last one we have on here, makes sense if you're Joel, but not if you're Loco. It's a 529 account, which is used to save for education expenses. And basically, this exists because college is really expensive. And so if you're looking to help a kid pay for college or private school, with the new tax law now, it can pay for private school when they're in primary through high school. It basically is money where you can put money into a 529 account. You don't get a tax break for it unless your state specifically has a state tax break, but the money can grow without getting taxed as long as you use it for education expenses. And that's pretty nice. I mean, that can be a big deal if you're starting when your kid is, not even 6 months old, like baby at law. That can be a lot of savings over time. With all of these accounts, if you're sitting there at tax time being like, oh shit, I need to lower my tax bill and I have some money saved, you can just put a lump sum in there. But for most of us, it makes more sense to do what's called dollar cost averaging, which is just contributing a set amount per month into these accounts as much as you're able, or to max it out or whatever. But there's a couple big advantages to this. And those big advantages speak to the things that we've already talked about. First, it's predictable. So if you're setting up something like a payroll, you can automatically siphon that out of there so you don't have to remember to do it each month. Second, it can help you save over time, which is often easier than saving up a big lump sum and putting it in. So it's one of those things where you don't have to think about it anywhere near as much. And the third is it generally means you're getting more money in earlier, which if you're investing it on average leads to you having more at the end.
Yeah.
Those are the major types. But if you are basically the point here is if you already have money that you were going to save, you should look into some of these types of accounts because you can just straight up get a tax benefit for something you were already going to do, just do it in a different way. It can literally be equivalent to shifting money from one hand to the other and not paying and then paying way less in taxes, right?
Yes. And I would argue that some of them, you can get pretty creative with some of the planning that you can do with these.
And I do.
Yeah. So I would say that like probably far and away, like Galen said, the one that would apply for most U.S. content creators, it is the HSA, right?
Yeah.
And the HSA is unique in that it's the only type of tax vehicle that is triple tax advantaged in the U.S. Right?
Mm-hmm.
When I say this is, we're getting full on tax nerd, financial nerd at this point, right? So please excuse our raging
Dear Aunt
nerd.
Sally.
Yeah, but okay, that went totally different directions, right? But then please excuse our raging nerddom when it comes to this taxes. But we're kind of explain why it's triple tax advantage, right? The biggest thing is to make sure that you can only contribute to an HSA and take advantage of its triple tax advantage if you are in an HDHP, which is a high deductible health plan, right? So this is tricky because I know it's not always available to everyone. For example, it was not available to me last year, and HDHP was not available to me last year, but it is available to me this year, which is why I'm taking advantage of an HSA this year, right? But when I say triple tax advantage, it means one, you can do it with pre-tax money. So this, if you contribute to it, it directly lowers your tax liability. Two, its earnings are tax-free, right? And then three, if you use it for a eligible health expense, you never pay tax on it, right? So with an IRA, you either deduct it from your taxes now, but you pay tax later, or you pay taxes on it now and then you don't pay tax later. So you're getting taxed at one point, but this is an HSA is the one where you can get away with never paying taxes on it, even on the growth, right?
Yep.
So like that kind of goes down the line. The 529, there are no deductions for it as far as contributions go, but there are deductions for growth.
States often
might have some, but like state is,
but it's state specific. So like California doesn't.
Yeah, and also state taxes are usually not that much relative to your federal tax. State taxes are not a lot.
That's true.
You can set up a 529 for yourself if you wanted to kind of like let them kind of, let's say if you decide to go back to school at some point in the future, and you can set it up for yourself and then use it for qualified expenses later on. But those 529s are an investment account where retirement accounts are an investment account. A health savings account can be an investment account, but it can also just be like a typical savings account without much of a return. Anyway,
if you're talking about saving for education, you have to go like super in depth on some of the. You can at least go super in depth on some of the tax stuff, depending on how far away a school is and things like that. So that one I wouldn't.
Yeah. So
529s are great, but there's a lot of things you have to consider with saving for education.
Yes. So the order that we listed them in is very intentional, because the first one that you should see if you're qualified for is for a health savings account. And like, let's be frank, the amount of money that you may have saved and set aside to kind of put towards these things, you probably would be maxed out on your health savings account first, and if not that, at least your retirement account before you kind of get to a 529, unless you're at like the top 1%, which I hope you are, but then or I hope you get there. But anyway, so if you can contribute to a health savings account, and if you can find out if you're eligible for an HDHP, I would suggest that you go to do it. At least strongly consider it. There might be other considerations that you should make when it comes to determining health insurance, which we can discuss about in a future episode, because health insurance is such a weighted topic in America. But all of these tips regarding tax advantage accounts, the purpose of them is that we discussed business expenses previously, and business expenses are a way to reduce your business's income so that you have a lower tax liability for your business. These accounts are ways that you can reduce your personal side income so that you can reduce your personal tax liability. Well, I mean, when you're a business, it's kind of, they go hand in hand because it just flows through to you, right? But this is something that you would do on the outside of the Schedule C. We talked about the Schedule C last week. This is something you would do outside of the Schedule C, and it's when you you figured out your business income now. Now your income is shifted to you as your personal income, and then from there you do what you can to lower your personal income.
Yep.
Now that I think we've thrown out a lot of information out there, and we're going to try to tie it back a little bit now to see as we get into our procrastinators tips, right? So these are for probably everybody, because we know that most of you haven't been doing these tips and practices throughout the year. If you have been, great, wonderful, I applaud you. You're probably doing better than I am, right? But then the reason we covered those first is because we can now tie it back into the procrastinator tips, and how, if you haven't been doing it, well, here's what you can do to kind of make up ground and then also get to where you should be before you go start preparing your taxes. So, procrastinator tips. If you haven't been getting organized throughout the year and putting everything together for your tax preparation, do that now before you actually start your filing, right? Otherwise, don't start your filing and then say you have to pause midway through and then to go search for all those different pieces of information. Gather them all together right now. What information do you need? First, your filing demographic information. That's your name. If you're determine what filing status you're going to be, right? Are you filing as a single individual? Are you filing as a married person? Are you filing with a joint return with your spouse? Are you filing joint but separate filings, right? What else is there? Head of household?
Almost head of household. Almost no one does MFS.
Yeah.
Married filing separate.
That's kind of like the quote unquote going through a divorce status. And,
there's really rare circumstances in which it makes sense. So I would in general assume that you're not. But yeah, head of household, single, married filing joint, married filing separate.
Yeah.
But
so the three main ones are single, married filing joint, and head of household. I would argue probably the majority. Would you say the majority of Twitch content creators would be under single? Maybe I can't even say majority. Many of you would be under single, right? But then
forever alone Twitch streamers. Joel's calling you out.
No. All right. So I'm sure there's some head of households and there's some married filing jointly also. But yes, figure that information out first. And then when I say figure that information out first, it's because you need your name, your social security number, your date of birth, but you also need that for all of your dependents, all of whoever you're filing with, right? So, this might be a good time for you to remember your wife's birthday or your kids' birthdays if you have them. Also figure out your bank information, right? So that's your routing number, your account number, in case you want to do direct deposit for any refunds, or if you need to pay it and then you pay it through an ACH withdrawal transfer.
And then just collect, you said you have income information on here, but collect the miscellanea of, if you did have like an investment account or any of those accounts that we listed before, there will be some information that you need to gather from there. If you have, if you randomly bought some cryptocurrency, Coinbase might not actually have the tax information that you need, but you do need to get tax information from it. Like all of those kinds of things. Anything that you did involving money and a financial institution should have some sort of statement for you there that you pulled together, because it may or may not end up mattering, but you should just collect those annually anyways in case they do. What else do we have? Credit card? Yeah, we listed all of the bank stuff, all of the expense stuff.
Yeah.
Doing the separation, that's gonna suck for you if you haven't been doing it throughout the year.
Yes.
And guess what? That's your punishment for not doing it throughout the year.
Yeah, so this is why they're called the procrastinators tips, right?
Oh,
because this is where you hopefully you learn your lesson this year and you do it the right way next year, right?
Once burned, twice shy.
Yeah. But so at the very least, having all of that stuff and doing the legwork for it beforehand will make the actual filing part easier, right? When we said mentally organized, that also includes like know where all of your income sources are, right? Have that in your mind so that you know where to get all of them and put them together. Know where all your expenses might be, like Galen said, your PayPal statements, your credit card statements, your bank statements. Know where all that is and identify them and put that in one place, right? Because it's a step-by-step process. First, you got to determine everything that came in. Then you got to determine everything that went out. And then you got to do it all over again for the personal side after you do the business side. A tip for you in this aspect is to review your previous year's filings, which I hope to God you have previous year filings. Because,
Oh dear.
and then because then that way you can, it's kind of like a checklist. Well, if I deducted these expenses last year, do I have the same type of expenses this year, right?
So one of the things that I do when I'm bringing on a new client is ask them for their past year, maybe 2 years tax returns, because there is so much information that you can get out of those that people just forget about. And it's not like they're somehow like super negligent so they forgot about it, but just over the course of the year there's a lot of things that can happen that you might not remember at the once it comes time to file your taxes. So it is super helpful to walk through an old tax return and just see like, do I still have to worry about this? Do I still have to worry about this? Did any of this change? It's not that hard to do, and it's very helpful.
Yeah. For those of you, which I bet there are some of you out there that don't have previous year filings, maybe you were actually exempt from a filing or something like that. That's fine too. If you weren't exempt, do your best to get caught up. Don't do it now. Do your 2017 tax return first.
Yeah.
Then go back and make sure you're in compliance. Yeah. We'll just leave it at that because otherwise we're getting into like soapboxy, and we kind of did that already last episode too. Okay. Other thing for a procrastinator, right? So when it comes to when you planned ahead during the year, part of it, what you should have been doing is determining how you're going to file your taxes, right? And so this is picking a tax preparer. Well, part of that would have been, if you knew you're going to go with this accountant, you should have probably called him January at the latest, right? Because if you call him now, he's not available, right? But for those of you who have not done it yet, figure out this is your criteria, right? When it comes to determining how you're going to pick a tax preparer. Well, but before we get into that, though, there is something that helpful for what we discussed. I think we forgot to mention with the tax advantage accounts, where some of it's actually procrastinator friendly. You can contribute to those accounts up to the filing deadline of the following year. So
some accounts. IRAs, yes.
HSAs, yes.
HSAs, yes. SEP IRAs, which is a business account, yes, but not 401ks, not simple IRAs.
Yeah.
So
401ks come out of your paycheck anyway, right? So
right, which is why you can't. But you can't. You also can't. If you're a business owner, you can't open and fund a 401k for the previous year.
Yes.
Versus you can open and fund a SEP for the previous year.
Yes. Although I would say the majority of the people who are in that position probably would go with a SEP instead of a 401k anyway. Anyway, that's kind of other stuff. So if I wanted to reduce my tax liability for 2017,
can I do an actually?
Do what?
An actually?
Yeah.
Actually, if 401k, the contribution amount is determined by your salary. So if you are an LLC and you have set your reasonable salary from working with an accountant at something like $40K a year, you could put the full $18,500 in with a 401k, and you could not with a SEP.
I was more so discussing the administrative fees, though.
Oh yeah, but if you can put in $3,000 more, but pay a little bit more in fees.
Yeah.
Or way more than 3,000 potentially.
Way more fees. Yeah. Anyway, okay. And there's a bunch of like legal loopholes you have to jump through for a 401k that usually you don't have to do with a SEP IRA.
Yes.
So anyway, that's our raging nerddom again. Please excuse us for the raging nerddom. What I meant by going procrastinator friendly for these accounts is that if I wanted to reduce my 2017 tax liability, although it's already 2018, there's not really much I can do except I can contribute to an IRA, and then right now up until the deadline to
I wrote an article on this.
Yeah.
It went out like a month ago.
Go read that article, and then you
Yeah.
can figure out that you can reduce your liability if you're looking for ways. That is a good way to reduce your liability. A not good way to reduce your liability is to spend more.
Yeah.
Yeah, on other stuff, which you can't do
That you
right now
don't
anyway
need
because it's
necessarily.
past the calendar year. Right.
And there's a good reason that they let you contribute to these accounts up until tax time, which is for IRAs or income-based phase-outs for when you're eligible to contribute to them. And oftentimes, especially for people who are self-employed, they don't actually know that income number until tax time. So they don't know what they can put in those accounts. So that's a big reason there. Same with SEP. It's income-based, a SEP IRA. With an HSA, there's no income-based phase-out. I straight up think that one is just because they really want you to be saving for healthcare.
Yeah, because healthcare is probably the biggest burden, not just on the American people, but also on the American government.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is not to reward your procrastination. This is to make it actually feasible for people who are business owners where they have variable or uncertain income so that they can know how to work around their various income-based phase-outs for these accounts.
I like that you said it's not to reward your procrastination.
It's not. It does.
Although
it does
it
in a way.
has an effect, but yeah, that's not the purpose of it. Yeah.
Yeah. All of the clients who I'm doing this kind of stuff with now, I probably could have done most of this with them in December of last year or even May of last year, but we're doing it now. Weird.
It's just incentives for you to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. What else did we want to discuss as far as procrastinator tips then regarding kind of a tie back to the year-round tips, right? There's not a whole lot actually. It's just the organization part because everything else, if you planned ahead, you had to do it during the actual year.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, I mean, it kind of goes to show why you should be doing the plan ahead, right? We had so many tips that are viable and practical for planning ahead, but with the procrastinator, there's really only like, it's not so much, it's how you can minimize the hurt. It's not how you can get rid of the hurt, but how you can minimize the hurt.
Well, you can sort of get rid of the hurt in that you can pay someone to do it. If you're in a position where you can pay someone to do it, and it's a real pain in the ass for you to do this kind of stuff, and it's draining, and your time would better be spent focusing on your business and doing the things that only you can do for your business, then it can make sense. And I'm not an accountant. I don't prepare taxes. This is not saying hire me. Actually, explicitly do not hire me for this. I can't do it. But you actually, the best, as with many things in our American system, the best way to minimize your hurt is apply money directly to it. In that you actually can pay people to do bookkeeping. You can pay people to do your taxes. You can pay people to help you figure out all of these moves. And it gets increasingly worth it the more that you have made over the course of the year, because you actually are able to pay for the services first. And second, you're increasingly complex.
Yes.
And the third is your time is increasingly valuable for your own business as well.
Yes.
So you need to look at it both from the saving yourself pain perspective and the good for your business perspective. Do you think that you will run an effective stream if you spent the previous 2 hours dealing with your taxes? Or will you be a complete salt lord?
And this is always my favorite time of year when you start seeing the tweets, sorry, stream canceled, got to do my taxes, right? Yeah. That's always, so you are...
Sorry, not earning income today.
That's exactly
I have to
what
follow
it
up
is.
to pay for my income. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. For those of you who have to, and I kind of, it's a little bit, I don't want to admonish you, but I kind of do.
No, do.
It's just basically like,
do it.
You are closing your business for a day because of the procrastination, right?
And guess what? An excellent tax preparer might cost you $500. So if you can't stream one day because you needed to prep to do your tax stuff and can't stream another day because you were so stressed out from doing your tax stuff, you might have cost yourself more than that $500.
Yes. Yeah. But that's also, it is minimizing a hurt to a degree, right? It's paying someone to do it, that's going to cost you money. But like a lot of times that money is not as painful as the actual mental tax or the mental torture you have to go through when it deals with it yourself.
My wife fights tooth and nail and super dirty to not have to be around when I'm doing our taxes.
Yeah.
Like she just hates it so much. And I'm the one who does it.
Yeah.
And like we're going to be outsourcing it in the future, but I've been the one who does it. And so it's not even like her having to do it, but it's such a like stressful thing for her to have to do that she, who is very good about getting things done and very responsible in most things, like tries to avoid it as hard as she can. And it's like, okay, fair enough. It is that painful sometimes.
Yes. And this is for people that like, we've studied this stuff, right? Some of it, this is kind of our profession. Although neither one of us is an accountant, like we've done tax stuff and we are capable of doing it. But we are, even though we have an interest in it, like I'll admit, I like tax law, right? Which that's kind of a weird thing to admit to. Yeah. But then, even then, I don't like filing taxes. I can tell you that for sure. Yep. So when we talked about minimizing your hurt, or at least like, so by paying to minimize your hurt, what are the criteria you have to think about when it comes to picking a tax preparer, right?
Well, yeah, the things we just talked about, actually, the things we just ranted about. But yeah, I'd say list them out so it's a little more comprehensive than a rant.
Yeah. So it's number one, your income. Can you afford it, right? Although this isn't the determining factor, it does help if you can pay your tax preparer, right? The second one, and I'll argue this is probably the biggest the reason for content creators, the complexity of your return. All of you as small business owners, hence the title of this show, you have a brand, you have a business, you have by default more complicated returns.
And right? Honestly, I can speak to this a bit from the example that I just gave of myself. I did my own taxes this year, A, because I know a lot about taxes because of my profession, and B, because like since my business started last year, started January 1 of last year, essentially, and I'd been tracking throughout the year, it actually wasn't that complex to do because I'd been tracking throughout the entire year. So all I had to do is look at my accounting software to get some numbers there. And then my wife is a W-2 employee from somewhere, and then we have some investment stuff. However, so like that, it is a complex return, but because of the actions I'd taken throughout the year and the fact that I actually studied this, it made it a lot less complex. However, next year, when theoretically my business does better, which, hopefully it does, theoretically it should, I'm going to outsource it. I'm going to have someone else do it because it will get more complex. And even though I could, it's not worth my time and it's not worth the hassle.
Yes. And that leads to the other ones, right? Well, before we get to there, it's also sometimes adding to the complexity of your return are unusual events that might significantly affect your income or expenses. Me, for example, I had a kid, right? So once you add in a dependent last year, it changes a lot when your actual return, and it changes different things, right? So that in itself was a big reason for me to outsource all of my tax preparation, let alone just that I didn't do such a good job as Galen in tracking my own expenses. So my return is pretty complex because of.
Are you saying you don't obsessively keep an eye on how your business is doing? Because I definitely am a little obsessive about.
I do I have multiple businesses. I do I do. My wife does for one of them. I don't for the other one, right? So. That's why, and I say that like even people who have studied it aren't necessarily the best ones to do it, right? And me being a prime example, right? So unusual events that significantly affect your income or your expenses, that is another big reason whether that adds complexity or not that you could have controlled on why you should pick a tax preparer or how to pick a tax preparer. Concern about an audit, that's another big one for so many people. Like that's another reason for that I choose
huge reason.
Yeah.
To get someone in your court to deal with the IRS if there's something coming up, like that is a big deal.
Yes. Yeah. And okay, not to toot my own horn, because I'm a licensed attorney, I have the ability to go practice in front of tax court. I'm not going to do it anyway, right? I still want somebody else to do it. I still want somebody
especially
else
for yourself.
Yeah, for myself. I don't like.
Yeah.
I mean, you can represent yourself in court. You don't have to be a licensed attorney to represent yourself in court, but most of the time people don't because somebody else is better suited for the job, right?
Yeah.
And then lastly, this is the pain threshold portion, right? So how much do you love or hate yourself that you want to spend countless hours with
and how much do you love or hate the subject matter too? it's easier. It is legitimately less painful for me because I know more about it. So I know why, like my tax software was asking me specific questions. I knew what it was getting at, right? I didn't have to try and figure it out, that kind of thing. So it's
Yes.
definitely individual.
Yeah, it's important to point out the criteria is all relative, right?
Hmm.
So you have to answer those criteria questions for yourself first before you kind of get to the answer. Now, once you have that determined, what are your options when it comes to picking a tax preparation, right? So there are some resources available, sponsored by the IRS. Actually, they call it the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, and this is a way for typically people of like an AGI under 52,000, 53,000.
I don't remember the cutoff on that.
Yeah, but like, so if, and I think that would be most people anyway, right? So it's a way that the
Yeah.
IRS kind of sponsors these programs, that they have volunteers to help you with your filing your income tax return, right? I would say this is a very, just because they're volunteers doesn't discount that. In fact, a lot of the programs that have these, like this, the VITA, we call it the VITA, right? The VITA,
Hmm.
Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. This is one of the favorite causes for charity or for business schools and law schools, right?
Hmm.
So I know professors that were always asking, like, do we want people to kind of go do to kind of help with this volunteer income tax assistance, right? Because it's a great experience also for you
Oh yeah.
if you're studying this stuff, right? So
High
this is,
volume.
yeah, this is a way for you as a person who needs tax assistance to get what would probably somebody who's very expensive to hire in the future to help you do it for now for free.
Hmm.
Yeah. There's also TurboTax and other software like that, right? So that usually ranges about maybe $100 to $150 depending on the level that you're getting.
Yep.
Um,
I use TurboTax this year. It's very
yeah,
good.
TurboTax is great. It actually, like, you can do it as from a self-employed individual because the user interface is very friendly on TurboTax. It just kind
Well,
of
and when
guides
you
you
do it
through.
as a self-employed individual, they give you QuickBooks Self-Employed for like as included as paying for doing the return through
Yeah,
them, which they do because they want you to use QuickBooks, which is their software, and then the next year file with them again because you're using QuickBooks and it's easy
yeah,
and so on and so forth. But like that is a material benefit that you get that if you use their software, you get access to QuickBooks.
yeah. It's worth pointing out that both TurboTax and QuickBooks are owned by Intuit, which is the name of the company, right? So they are the ones that that's probably the most well-known tax preparation software. Um, Although there's like Tax Act and other ones that are like kind of, some of them are online based, and
Yeah,
um,
there are a bunch of advertising this
yeah,
year.
but those are that's one way of doing it yourself, right? Just know that they're they do. I think they offer like a audit protection feature. I think
Yeah,
it's, you have to
if
pay for it.
there's a certain level that you pay for at
Yeah,
which they offer audit protection where you'll have like a CPA available if you get audited to
yeah,
be the person handling the audit.
yeah.
I don't
So
remember at what point it is, and I think it can just be an add-on even if you're not like buying the level of TurboTax
yeah,
that they require for it. I
and
don't know.
we're not sponsored by TurboTax or any other service, right?
We tried to be. They didn't say okay.
I wonder if we should try in the future. But we're not sponsored by anything. We're just kind of giving you our personal experiences because we've both used TurboTax in the past and we've both used other services in the past. Um, that's a good way to start, if you, especially if you don't necessarily have the some of it's trade-off, right? Like if you're not in a position where you can pay for the more expensive stuff, but you can go for the cheaper alternative, but then understand that you're probably uh, what you don't pay in money, you have to pay in complexity and in sweat equity, right? So
Hmm.
that you have to, there'll be more work for you to do. The other alternative is then kind of in between that is those walk-in tax preparation places like H&R Block and other what I call mass market preparers. I would argue that if you're, you know, if you're confident in your ability to understand and do a little bit of research, you're probably better off just going with TurboTax than going into a walk-in prep, right?
Hmm.
So just know that that is an option out there. For me, the two probably best the two best options I would argue for content creators are TurboTax or just go on full with a hire an accountant or a CPA to do your actual
Well,
return.
and I've definitely got a pretty specific take on that, which is if you're not if you're in a position where you are low enough complexity that you can use, or confident enough that you can figure it out, that you can use TurboTax, then you don't have a reason to use someone like H&R Block. And if you are of a complexity where it makes sense that you can't use TurboTax, you should probably at that point be paying an accountant. And part of the reason for that, beyond just the complexity argument, is that it's really, really useful to have an ongoing relationship with someone when it comes to tax stuff because of the things that we were talking about before, like referring to your previous tax return, where they can, over time, help you catch things that you might not have been aware of for your business, or just help you catch things that you did the year before that you meant to do this year and just forgot, right? There's a lot of value in having that continuity of having someone who knows your business do your taxes.
And you know, it's worth pointing out, like, if it's the first time you work with a CPA or an accountant, you might pay a little bit more because he or she has to charge you a certain amount of time to get familiar with your situation. But subsequent years, if you continue with the same person, they're already familiar with your situation. That's less time that they have to charge because that's less amount that they have to charge because they're spending less hours.
That's true with most professionals. I mean, with new clients, I charge an onboarding fee because I spend a shitload more time at the start of their plan, at the start of our relationship, just figuring out who they are, what their situation looks like, where they're trying to go, and things like that. And then after that, that fee drops off because I already have that information. I'm not going to have to re-spend that time. So yeah, it's definitely something that you should see over time.
Yeah, and like, you know, if you find a good CPA or accountant, which if you need a referral to one, we'd be happy to help. If you find a good one, sometimes they'll help you. Like, I get emails from my CPA throughout the year, not only because they do payroll for me for other stuff, but also just like, you know, be aware of certain things. Like one of them, example, we are going to talk a little bit about this, but it's tax scams, right? So I get emails from my CPAs letting me know of like, there's certain scams going around, especially targeting business owners, because you would not believe the amount of crap that people try to, like, I thought there were a lot of scams originally for individuals. The scams for business owners are like on another level. They're entirely more complex because they know that there's more that they can get there. It's people going for the big returns, the big risk, the big returns, right? So, but I get emails from my CPA saying, be careful about this, be careful about that. Like, know that this is a change in law that might affect you. And it's great. It's great to have somebody that's knowledgeable in your corner helping you look out for these things and being aware of what your situation might be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, this the same way that you have a doctor, right? You usually go with the same doctor to kind of make sure they know what your health history is like. You then go with somebody. If you stick with a financial professional, whether that's an accountant or the financial planner, preferably both, then make sure that you have, you know, they're out there to help you with your financial health. So,
absolutely.
Before we get into the tax scams, though, does anybody have any questions regarding tax tips or best practices? And these are kind of just some of the bigger ones that we've kind of wanted to share. Throughout the rest of tax month, we will probably be like tweeting different things that we find out. Galen will definitely be publishing articles that he writes that'll help with that. So if you haven't already, please do go follow us on social media. This very easy to find us right here. Because, you know, aside from either baby pictures or other stupid memes that we like to post, which I think
it's mostly cat pictures for me.
Yeah, I think we have a pretty decent amount of quality posts, even if they are memes, right? So,
I like to keep my like memes to quality ratio pretty balanced.
Yeah,
I'm human.
You'll get some pearls of wisdom occasionally from there that regarding information that we find that we think is applicable, and oftentimes it's not going to be stuff that we came up with, right? So like it's from stuff that Galen writes a lot of stuff before, especially for me. It's a lot of times that articles I find is helpful from other professionals that I think it's worthy to bring to the attention of the content creation field or content creation industry.
You'll see me tweet a lot of or retweet a lot of things about behavioral finance because I think it's incredibly important and really interesting. So if that's something that you find interesting at all, you will definitely see that from me. Yeah. Not because I'm some super expert in it, but because I follow the people who are and they're really interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Tax scams.
Tax scams. Yeah. So
there are so many.
Yeah. if the IRS is trying to get in contact with you, they're not going to call you. They're going to
You'll
send
get
you
a
a letter.
scary ass looking letter.
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes the IRS letters are scary, but they're not meant to be. But just know that the way that the IRS's preferred method of communication is postal mail, right?
Yep.
So
You
the
feel a
IRS
chill
is,
across your soul and you notice that your mailbox is full. You've probably gotten something from the IRS.
yeah. They're not going to call you, so be wary of anybody that says they're calling from the IRS.
And they're not going to robocall you.
Yes.
Hello, this
Yeah.
is the IRS.
Yeah. Other things to be aware of, like, and some of them aren't even like malicious scams. For example, Gail and I were talking about this earlier. The IRS is a government agency, so the website for the IRS is .gov.
Mm-hmm.
If you get something from IRS.com, that's more than likely it's going to be a, it's not necessarily a scam, but it's marketing, right? So
Go to .gov.
yeah. So you get this a lot, and sometimes like there's some people are definitely just trying to scam you out of their money, but others are just like and I hate these. It's like the I know I'm sure you've gotten these. They send you a business offer, but it looks just like an invoice, right?
Yep.
They purposely make their marketing material look like an invoice, so you think it's a bill you have to pay, because businesses get bills from everywhere, right? So a lot of the times the person in charge of the billing just kind of, all right, this is an invoice. Let me go
IRS.glove. Is that actually a site? I'm not going to click on it.
Click on an after stream, right?
Yeah.
But still, yeah. So be wary, and a lot of it just kind of you have to make sure that you're kind of looking into it, right? So, and Ernest talked a lot about it last week. Also, the IRS they are scary. They can be scary, but more often than not, they want to work with you also, because that means they'll get some paid.
They're people.
Yeah.
They're not like tax demons or something.
Yeah. When it comes to like government agencies, I like to think that the IRS and both well, maybe not the USCIS anymore. The USCIS I used to have a pretty favorable impression of, but this is getting into politics again. But anyway, the IRS, I feel like that they get an undeservedly bad rap, whereas
because people don't like taxes.
Yeah, that people don't. But like, whereas the DMV, for example, they deserve their bad rap.
Yes.
Yeah. So, sorry to all you DMV people out there, but be nicer, man. Like, people are just trying to get their identification or pay their registration fees, right? But yeah, IRS scams, tax scams. Be wary about what you see. I know there's a lot more robocalling going on, or even sometimes it's just an actual individual calling you trying to scam you out of money. The IRS is never going to ask you to wire money.
They won't ask you to wire money. They won't ask for gift cards. They won't ask. They won't arrest you. Mm-hmm. So if it's like, hey, this is Officer so and so, the IRS is not going to like have the local police come and arrest you.
And you know why the IRS won't arrest you? You can't pay your taxes if you're in jail.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's and if someone does call you and say, I am this or that person of official capacity, say, great, I'll call you back, hang up, look up that person and see, A, would they be someone who would be contacting you at all?
Yeah.
And B, call them from the number you find like on the local sheriff's site or something like that, if it is a sheriff calling you.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to spoof who you are. You can spoof a phone number. You can Google the local county sheriff and see the name of, sheriff, Deputy Jim Bob or whatever. But like if Deputy Jim Bob calls you, he will not object to you saying, hey, I just want to verify this. I'm going to call you right back. Hang up, go to the site, call. Yeah. Like we actually have, we actually got a presentation at my local financial planning association chapter meeting from a local sheriff about these kinds of tax scams. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Just hang up, look up a number on your own, never click a link that they give you or call a number that they give you, and then figure it out from there. And he said they get calls all the time that like people just checking in whether or not it was actually them. And they're like, no, why would we ever call you for that?
Yeah. It's worth noting that's generally pretty good advice too for verification. Just like, if you're late at night and then you see sirens behind you and someone's trying to pull you over, it's okay to call 911 and double check that it's actually police trying to pull you over.
Wow. Deputy
yeah.
Jim Bob Lee yields a lot of results that I wouldn't expect. They're all white, though.
So today was a different type of episode, but it's kind of more some practical advice. And Galen and I are both, even if it was a little bit hard to follow, I do apologize if the advice today was a little bit hard to follow. But please do feel free to reach out to us. And we are more than happy to reiterate or repeat this information, because the main thing is, if you want to hire us, great, right? We're happy to have more business, right? But then at the same time, it's also, we want you not to be afraid of these things, right? The biggest thing is also like this, again, this is a little bit nostalgic, kind of, right? So this show started out of a panel that we did at TwitchCon, which was all about helping to address these issues, right, which are decidedly complex and scary, especially if that's not an area that you've studied, right? Financial literacy isn't what it should be in the country, or really anywhere. And then it's just kind of some of these things are needlessly complex, but that doesn't mean that you have to be. The worst thing you could do is the ostrich in the heads in the sand approach for this kind of stuff.
Completely agreed.
So don't ignore them. Instead, get a little bit informed, and that's what we're here for. We want to help you with getting informed, and exactly what StreamerSquare here is for, whether it's tech issues or other things. Twitch community guidelines, sponsorships is just helping you get informed so that you can. And a lot of this is, even if you do hire a CPA or something like that, you should still do your research so you know what questions to ask, so you can have a better, appointment with that tax preparer, and he or she will appreciate it also. If you know it, like, so rather than he or she having to spend the time to kind of walk you through everything, it's just you have saved that many steps if you're already aware of what you need to do.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. What is next week's topic, Galen?
Next week's topic is, as far as I know, not planned out yet. Next week's topic, I think we're going to see if we can schedule enough folks for the call-in show. Because I think that is something that'll be helpful, because it'll be a lot of people, I imagine at least, asking similar questions to ones that you'll have, or that have come to you in the past.
Yeah, and that's actually a great reminder. If you are here, please go ahead and join our Discord, right?
Yep.
There is a Your Brand, Your Business channel. If you ever have any questions, whether they're related to taxes or not, just go ahead and submit them there. We're available to talk to you on that Discord also. So it's just, we can always use the questions as a topic for a future episode. So next week, let's kind of do this. We still have to discuss the personal aspect of a tax return, which we haven't discussed. And what do we mean by personal aspect? We're talking about standard deductions. What are deductions that you can take as an individual, but not a business?
That's true.
Right? And then also, because you guys are still individuals, it's not enough that you file your Schedule C. Your Schedule C is only a means to getting to your actual tax return, your 1040. So let's do a combination of your personal side, because for most people, it'll probably just be your standard deduction. Although it's still worth pointing out what itemized deductions are available.
Yep.
And then, and actually what, there are some like above the line deductions that might apply to you also. But still, we'll talk the personal side tax return, and just what's involved in actually after filling out your Schedule C, then what do you do after that? And we'll also crowdsource questions that are tax related for our call-in portion of the show. You know what? Just to stoke our egos a little bit, or just to make us not feel so bad. Thank you for being here. If you do have a question, just, if you want to call and just say hello, we'll actually have it so your voice will be on stream with us. So you can just call in and say hi if you want to, or some comments. We would like to hear it too. All right. Thank you for being here. Galen, where can they find you?
The best place to find me is on Twitter, which I believe we linked earlier. Just because I'm always on Twitter. I get some work done, but mostly Twitter. And then after that, if you're looking for some of the articles that we've mentioned, my blog is at pajamapantsfinance.com, and my actual company site is buffyourfinances.com.
Crap,
I don't think there's a Galen command.
That would be cool though. Yeah.
I don't think there's a Galen command.
Yeah. Mikino is banner Reno you. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. That's the same place. Twitter is always a good place to reach out for. Twitter much is pretty much the LinkedIn, right, of this industry that we talked about last week. Or 3 weeks ago. That was a developing relationships episode with Phelan. But still, yes, that's where you can find me. I do have a mailing list, which there's a pinned tweet on my profile. If you want to, I haven't really utilized that yet, and for that I apologize. But if you want to join the mailing list, that's where we kind of send out different pieces of advice that I think are worth pointing out, and other ways that you can kind of keep in touch. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. We always appreciate you having in chat and also with your comments and your questions. It makes this show a lot more rewarding for Galen and I.
Oh, absolutely. We've got our pre-prepared stuff, which is definitely useful information, but it's the most useful when it's guided by you to the topics that you actually care about.
Yes, exactly. All right, couldn't have said it better myself. All right, thank you. Thanks, Galen, again for being here with us, and thank you for Loco for providing this space. We will talk to you next week. Bye.
See you next week. Bye.